Hey, Suits, for everybody out there that is watching and listening, can you explain what is the Oklahoma drill in football?
Well, it's not fun. Let's put it that. Let me start with that. It is a physical drill where you're in a circle and you circle the guys up. There's one guy in the middle, and that guy will change, and then the coach will call out a number or a player, and you have to square up, turn, and find who's coming at you. You make contact, and then the next guy comes, and the coach can speed up or slow down that process depending on how the guy that's taking those hits is doing in the middle. So it is a very physical drill. There's different versions of it, slightly different versions of it, but it's kind of one you do early in training camp. Not to at the pro level, you're not testing toughness. So if you get to the pro level, you're tough enough to play football. But at the lower levels, you see that early in training camps because you want to set the bar for the expectation of the physicality of the game.
Okay, quick question. Does it hurt? Like, it can be painful, right? Like, you can get your block knocked out. Okay. Now here's the reason why.
You can get knocked on your butt because that circle, if you are looking ahead and the coach yells out a name and you can't find the guy in time and you just turn around in time to barely brace yourself, you're going to take a good hit. I mean, they're coming from 5 yards away almost. So it's a physical, reaction type of drill that you have to be on your toes or you can get knocked around pretty good. Now, as far as, does it hurt? Not really. You're padded up. I mean, kids love it. I mean, you love to hit each other. I mean, that's part of the
okay.
Part of
well, so here's the reason why I ask. Yesterday, Barney and Sharky had Jermarcus Hardrick of the Saskatchewan Roughriders come in and co-host the show for 2 hours between 4 and 6. And apparently, when he came in to the Century Studios at 620 CKRM, he said to Curtis, who is our technical producer, Curtis, I don't want to misquote you, but basically he's like, you look like you're a big guy. I want to run the Oklahoma drill against you. And I was like, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I was.
You do not stand a chance against that mountain of a man. Even if he was going at a quarter of a speed, you are not coming out of there alive.
Yeah, no, I'm not exactly like a small guy. Like to put it out there for the people in Radio Land. I'm 6 foot and I'm like 200 pounds.
Okay.
Don't want to do the Oklahoma drill though.
Not against Jermarcus Hardrick, No.
He's only on one leg and he'd probably still throw you around.
We're talking 350 there, at least 350.
I know, and it's funny, and you watch the interview, and he's such a nice man, and he's so well spoken. I was like, well, I wonder if he was just marking territory when he came in to be like, yeah, me and you, Oklahoma, and just to like, listen, this game is about intimidation, Suits. You know that. If I'm living rent free in your head, whether I'm a yard off the ball or 5 feet away in a radio studio, I am going to dominate and I am going to win. All right, let's get to some football. The big news, what I think was big news, and maybe it's a week too late, the BC Lions have announced that Vernon Adams Jr. will be starting this weekend when the Montreal Alouettes and the BC Lions clash. Mm-hmm. Was this on the right timeline, or was this a week too late? Because remember, a week ago, they were playing for a home playoff game at Mosaic Stadium in Regina, and the Lions did not look good last Saturday.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on this bone, and let's start with the fact that what's happened with the Lions and the inconsistency with the Lions has actually not a lot to do with Nathan Rourke's play. I mean, that play in the second play from scrimmage in Regina was a great example of kind of what's happened when this team has played poorly, and it's played poorly too often over the last month. In Vancouver. And, when it bounces off a receiver's chest into the hands of A.J. Allen, who takes it to the house. I mean, Nathan Rourke can't throw it any better than that. Now, I'm not building an alibi for Nathan because, this move, I think, from Coach Campbell was inevitable with the way the team's going because of what he said when he signed Nathan Rourke back. I mean, Coach Campbell at that time said the only reason or the only way I was going to be okay with this signing was if Vernon Adams was part of our plans and part of our team. In other words, we might go with almost a 2-quarterback system. That's where he didn't say that part, but I read between the lines in his statement that that's what he was implying, that he believed in the 5-1 start of Vernon Adams and Nathan Rourke's upside and potential is through the roof great. So, bring those two guys in. We've got 2 legit starters. They're both going to be part of it. He's not training VA. So now, after losing the way they've lost over the last few weeks, especially the Regina game, I mean, that game in Saskatchewan, they just, come on, that wasn't that. I hate to say this because you hate to think that the effort wasn't there, and I don't want to take anything away from the Rider win, but that was bad. That was maybe their worst loss of the season. So I'm not surprised by the change. I will say this, guys. I just talked to Vernon Adams literally an hour ago, and as much as I still believe, and my narrative on Nathan Rourke won't change, I believe Nathan Rourke will lead whomever he's leading. If that's BC for the next few years, he's going to lead them to a championship. I am convinced of his skill. I'm convinced of his fundamentals. I think he is a championship caliber quarterback. And that's a very small sample size to say that, but I truly believe Nathan Rourke can be that guy. Having said that, Vernon Adams can write a heck of a book right here. I mean, if you guys go and talk to young kids and Vernon Adams wins this game against Montreal, finishes the regular season, starts in the playoffs, and takes them on a run to the Grey Cup at home as the starter after how he handled the whole transition with Nathan Rourke coming in, that is a story of team-first mentality and leadership, of perseverance when something is out of your control, a decision is out of your control. He was hurt when Nathan first got to Vancouver, so the first 2 games, he wasn't available anyway. But after that, there was a choice to be made, and Coach Campbell stuck with Nathan Rourke. So, I just think they have both handled this like true pros, and that gives them a chance. Of the teams in the Western playoffs, they're ranked 3rd, and they should be. And it's probably right now a distant 3rd. I think, as I said on Tuesday, I think the Riders have closed the gap on the Bombers a ton, and the BC Lions, the way they played the last month and a half, a distant 3rd in that grouping. But because of the way the quarterbacks have handled it in Vancouver, they still have the potential to upset the group. I still think they have the potential. Outside, yes. A mountain to climb, yes. But with those 2 quarterbacks and the way they've handled it, just first-class, professional, team-first guys.
Glen Suitor, I had a coach growing up that told me my job is to put you in position to succeed. Has Rick Campbell not put himself in the ultimate position to fail? In meaning that, so Vernon Adams Jr., like you say, right? What a great story. If he comes in and he does everything right this week, then Rick Campbell's got to make a decision. What do I do next week in the playoffs when I've got this guy that we're paying all this money and we got this other guy here? Or conversely, maybe things don't go so well for Vernon Adams Jr., or it's a question mark as to whether or not he was really that good. Then you don't potentially have anybody that you're confident in going into 2 weeks. So is this the ultimate no-win for the GM and head coach of the BC Lions?
No, I wouldn't say that. Like, I don't know that for the coach, for the head coach. It certainly does for a president, an owner for sure. When you're talking about, the guy they're paying a lot of money and the guy that's starting isn't being paid as much money. I don't think even at the, at the NFL level where the dollars are substantially different, that should ever be part of the process. I really don't. I know people will say, come on, reality is it is part of the product. If you get starter money, you're the starter. Well, if you start doing that as a coach, the locker room knows. The locker room, wants to see the guy who's earned it. And I think this is not necessarily a case where VA has earned it over the play of Nathan Rourke. It's just a case of this team is stagnant, and they want to see what this guy who started the season 5-1 and averaging around 350 yards a game, and in MOP discussions in the first third of the season, they want to see if they can bring some of that magic to help this team get out of its rut. So let's see if that happens. But, I don't think it paints anyone in any corner. If this goes well, I shouldn't guarantee. I won't make any guarantees, and I don't want to speak for the coach, so I won't do that. But if this goes well for Vernon Adams and they win against Montreal, and he starts the playoff game and looks good, then he'll keep rolling with Vernon Adams. I truly believe he'll do that. And then in the off season, let's see what they do. I'm not going to change my narrative on my belief in Nathan Rourke. I think Nathan Rourke fundamentally is maybe one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in my time in broadcasting. And I covered Ricky Ray and a lot of guys. This guy fundamentally has the work ethic, the footwork, the leadership skills, the accuracy, the processing time. It's as good as I've ever seen. When he went down to the NFL, I felt like he'd be in the Pro Bowl in 2 years if he got a real look in the NFL. And that's just judging skill, not money, not glitz, not glam, not ratings. It's simply breaking down the skill level of a quarterback from all the years of experience. And I think both these guys, what impresses me though, and it reminds me a little, and I hate to bring up my time playing, but it reminds me a little of Ken Austin and Tom Burgess in our locker room. Ken Austin and Tom Burgess in our locker room are two starting quarterbacks, two very good starting quarterbacks. Slightly different. One was better against zone looks, one was better against man, but both good leaders in the room, both different style leaders, and never divided our room. And I think that's what's happening in BC. That's what gives them hope. They're a distant third out of 3 in the Western final ratings, but that doesn't mean they can't surprise people and take a run. And their quarterbacks both of these guys are giving them a chance to actually accomplish that. And I'm cheering for VA. It doesn't change how I feel about Rourke, but I'm cheering for VA in that he has been such a great pro and a great teammate. This is what this game is all about. It teaches you that you have to be a great teammate to succeed. If you're not, it will never happen. It forces you to do it, and we need more of it in society. So it's a good lesson to learn.
Okay, moving on to this week. And again, I love your thoughts. Thanks, Glenn. And, this is where I give you and Luke the ultimate respect. You've been there. You've done that. You understand what it means to be a professional football player and inside the locker room. Tomorrow in Hamilton, the Calgary Stampeders take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Now, the game doesn't mean a lot in the standings, but obviously we in the media, right? The media guy in me that's never been in a locker room like you have say, jobs are on the line, and, you're making a statement for next year, and there's all this, and then there's the narrative, guys are going to be making business decisions, right? Because they've got to worry about how they're going to feed their family next year, and they don't want to go down that road. How, as a player, have you seen other players approach games like this where you're fighting for a job, but you're also making sure that you take care of business?
It's a great question. And it's a question that I'm going to sound a little bit like I'm going in two opposite directions here. But one is the pro that has only one group of people to be accountable for, and that's their teammates. So when you're sitting in a locker room, especially one that's been built right with a real good culture, and you're sitting in that room, and I looked across to Bobby Jurison and Roger Aldag. Now they're looking across to the same type of players, any one of these guys in these rooms, and they're saying, I'm accountable to him. And if I let him down, even if it doesn't have anything to do with the standings or whatever, if I let him down, it's going to be hard for me to look in the mirror for 6 months in the off season. That's motivation enough. And if it's not, you might have the wrong guys in the room. If you're not playing for each other in there and looking across the room and seeing guys and saying, that guy, I'm responsible. I want to be great for him. So that's the motivation, I think, that keeps you accountable to your play. But the reality is there's a difference between playoff hockey and regular season hockey. There's a difference between playoff football and regular season football, and there just is. And if you could bottle the intensity of playoff football, where one game you either go on or go home, if you could bottle that in the regular season, you'd be undefeated every year. So something happens to us as human beings when we do know it's now or never. When you're on that on that edge, that ragged edge, and you're looking at it saying, if we don't get it done now, it's over. Season is done. This group of men that are in this locker room will never be the same again, because every year it changes. So if you love your locker room, you have that urgency when it comes to playoff time, and you can't bottle it and you can't figure it out. That's why almost always I say on the air that the coaches in the playoffs really don't need a pregame speech. All they really need to do is open the locker room door. Let the guys go. Because that's all you need. Just open the door. We're ready to go, right? Like, because that's the urgency that will automatically be there. And you can't really, I don't think you can duplicate it. I don't think you can, figure out how to get yourself there. It just automatically happens.
Rider legend Glen Suitor is on the Western Pizza guest hotline. He's a Grey Cup champion. We had a Grey Cup champion in town last weekend, and Darian Durant, who went into the Plaza of Honor. It was good to see doubles. A lot of memories, and I know it won't happen maybe in the next year or two, but eventually Bo Levi Mitchell's name will be up at McMahon Stadium, and once all is said and done and the feelings are gone, how crazy is it that a quarterback that is not going to be in the playoffs is leading stat-wise and is put up, and at times, it wasn't his fault when the receivers were dropping the ball, some incredible numbers. Tomorrow, Calgary takes on Hamilton, and it's a weird game because Bo staying or going? Is the Jake Mayer era over? Is Matthew Schultz going to come in and show the management? And a lot of people are questioning, is Dave Dickinson? And the thing is, the Stamps are missing the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. And they're making it sound like this is a regular occurrence. That's 2 decades. But the standard is so high for Stampeder football, missing the playoffs just doesn't happen. Are people overreacting? Let's start there. On the Dickinson front, they just had a bad year.
Yeah, well, it's really been 2. It's been 2 years. In fact, they haven't really been that team that we were used to 3 or 4 years, 5 years ago, with Dave Dickinson in charge when Bo was there. I mean, that team was dominant, and Bo's record was unbelievable when he was in Calgary. Mm-hmm. Since they made the change, and it's not all on Jake Mayer. He's had his moments that he's looked great and then not so great. So, but they haven't won in 2 years, really. So, the what have you done for me lately sort of cliche applies here when it comes to Dave Dickinson. I will say this: if they do decide to move on from Dave Dickinson, he'll be snapped up quickly. He'll be hired. He'll be hired immedately. In
a second, he would be hired.
Yeah, in that regard, I guess it is a bit of an overreaction to talk, to say that he should be fired and not get a chance to rebuild. But let me preface that, because the quarterback and coach are often tied at the hip really closely, especially when Dave Dickinson made the decision to move on from Bo and go with Jake Mayer, and that decision has not produced playoff football or a chance at a Grey Cup. So that is going to change the dynamic for Jake Maier. Now, I'm not saying he's going to disappear from the league. I think he still has upside potential. But there's going to be probably two quarterbacks that every team in the league is going to be very interested in the offseason. One is Davis Alexander in Montreal, and who is now 4-0 as a starter in Montreal when he's filled in for Cody. But he's probably should be 5-0 because he came in early after the start of Caleb Evans and won that game. So he's shown that he can get it done in a short sample size. And then, of course, VA and Nathan Rourke here. And then Nathan Rourke has signed a long-term deal. VA is a free agent at the end of the year. Trey Ford is also in this conversation. He's a free agent at the end of the year. What do teams look and think about that? So Calgary has to make some decisions quickly. And if they stick with Dave and Dave sticks with Jake, that might be a tough sell in the market. But if you have to make a change at the quarterback position, there's going to be a couple of guys that'll be very interesting on the market early in free agency. Or maybe before then in a trade possibility.
Glen Suitor, don't want to monopolize your time here on this Thursday evening, but Toronto-Ottawa is an intriguing matchup for me. I feel terrible that Ottawa is as beat up and banged up as they are. Do they even have a shot against Toronto, considering all the injuries they have?
Yeah, I think this year parity has been there. I mean, I think this has really been a year if any team could win at any time. It's funny you make that mention of Bo Levi Mitchell leading in the league in stats and a team that's not in the playoffs. So many starting quarterbacks like Bo, including Bo, have been pulled at one time or another this year. That's another thing we just have not seen because of this parity and the roller coaster that most teams have gone through, including the Riders. So Toronto's gone through it as well. Toronto is a interesting team. I think, as with all due respect to the best team in the league, which is still Montreal, and they're the best team by record, and they've had first place wrapped up for a while. I still think Toronto can beat Montreal in a playoff game. I think Toronto can beat anyone in the league. And it starts with the physicality of the defense, because at some point this time of year, you've got to stop the run. I think the Toronto defense has been the one defense that's consistently been able to do that. It's even against Winnipeg and Brady Oliveira, and that's their bread and butter. So, I think Toronto is really intriguing. If they're underdogs and you're putting $5 on a game, and they're underdogs, Toronto might be a good bet. They won't be underdogs against Ottawa, obviously, but I just, and that's a big game, because if Toronto wins that, they get home field.
All right. Are you working the BC game on Saturday against Montreal?
I am, and I got a chance to talk to both coaches today, and both are saying, both could actually rest starters. BC cannot improve their playoff positioning, and Montreal has been in first for 2 weeks. So basically, they could rest some starters, and neither guy is going to do this. They want to keep. Well, one team is doing it to try and get on track in BC. The other team says, we're going to keep pedal to the metal. We're going to keep with our standard. And that's why Montreal has the best record in the league. That approach.
All righty. He's one of the best, and he's ours. He's part of the Sports Cage. It's Glen Suitor. If you missed any part of this conversation, you can always go back and catch the podcast for Glen, Arash Madani, or Eric Francis, who we had on earlier talking about the NHL, and you can get all of our podcasts at sportscage.com. Time to take a quick break. When we come back, Saskatchewan Junior League Hockey. There's only one game tonight, and it's in Notre Dame. We'll check in with the play-by-play voice of the Hounds next on 620 CKRM.